I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. So ladies, welcome to Women Awakening. I'm Cynthia James. I'm your host, and I get the extraordinary opportunity to introduce you to women that inspire me, women that are change makers, women that are absolutely stepping through portals and inviting us all to come with them. So I'm thrilled to be here. I want you to know that I would love for you to subscribe. You know, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify and iHeart and Amazon Music, a lot of different places you can find us. Please subscribe and come back, because the women here have wisdom to impart to help you move to your next level. So my guest today, I'm so excited. I have known this woman for a very long time, Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano. And when she was 15 years old, she found religious science, right? She walked into Mile High Church in Denver, Colorado, and she knew she was home, right? So she started volunteering at the church and eventually joined its administrative staff, where she worked for 6 years. While she was doing that, she was continuing her studies. She became a practitioner. And in 1991, she received her degree in Ernest Holmes College, and she became a minister. She then became an assistant minister at the Huntington Beach Church of Religious Science for 4 years, the senior minister of New Vision Center for Spiritual Living in Phoenix for 17 years. And then she returned to Mile High in 2013 as an associate minister. In 2019, when Dr. Roger Teal retired, she accepted the role of co-lead minister along with Reverend Joshua Reeves. This is exciting. Her first book just got launched, and we're going to talk about that. The name of the book is Resolve Your Fears, Activating Your Spiritual Immune System. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
I am so happy to be with you. I'm so happy to see that you are not only anchoring such an amazing spiritual community, but you're spreading your wings out into the world to bring your message. And so I always like to start at the beginning, you know, because a lot of people think that successful people just leaped into that. And so I would love for you to just talk about a little bit about your childhood. You know, what was it like growing up?
One of my favorite books in the world is called A Path with Heart. And I like the subtitle a lot. It's by a man named Wayne Mueller. And the subtitle is The Spiritual Advantages of a Dysfunctional Childhood. And so I had great spiritual advantage, I would say, in many respects. I mean, on one level, I had loving parents in many ways, but they were very young. So I was born to teenage parents who found themselves pregnant with me. They were ill-equipped to be parents. And my father was raised in a household with alcohol addiction and rage addiction. And so there was violence in my household growing up, as my father pretty regularly beat my mother up and controlled my mother and tried to keep her under his control and keep her down. And they continued to have children. And so I was the oldest of 3 children. And so there was a lot of witnessing of physical abuse in my childhood. And my father was kind of like the classic Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. He was extremely charming and intelligent and good looking and fun. And on a day when he was centered, it was amazing. And we just never knew when there was going to be that shift that would occur. And suddenly everything changed. And they fought and fought and fought. And it was very scary and filled with tension. And finally, my mother, whom I speak about a lot in my book, had the courage to break out of this marriage and take her 3 children out of this dangerous home when she didn't have a career. She'd hardly ever worked. She barely had gone to college. He finally had let her go to college, and she was able to take us, and it was very hard. We were very poverty stricken for quite a while. I was babysitting to make money so we could eat, that kind of life. And then eventually she started finding her way and became a real estate agent and a mortgage lender. and became a international speaker and teacher and workshop facilitator and began to help other people. And so that was my childhood, but underneath all that was this part of me that always felt connected. I was that really weird little intuitive psychic child who told people things I shouldn't tell them about themselves, who kind of knew underneath all this crap that I'm witnessing, I could feel and sense something. So even though my father insisted we be raised in the Catholic Church, when my parents divorced, my mother and I freed ourselves of that. Not to mention that I got kicked out of catechism, but that's a whole other story altogether. And we started looking for spiritual sustenance. And we both had this intuitive sense that there was this force, this power for good in the universe, and that it was within us. And that led us to Mile High Church. And that changed my life forever, allowed me to really spread my wings.
Well, what I love about this is that your mother really was a way shower. She showed how to get out of something that wasn't supportive into an expression of herself that
Yes.
became a support for others. And I love that, because I came from a dysfunctional childhood too. And it was a journey trying to find myself, trying to take care of myself. And I would just love to talk for a moment about, what did you see in terms of the behaviors, the thought processes that didn't support you until you could find your center?
Well, a lot of it had to do, I think, with things I took on from my mother. I feel like, in a sense, I sort of have two mothers. I witnessed this young mother who couldn't really feel free to think for herself, speak for herself, have her own thoughts and ideas, and with a father who none of my emotions were allowed at all. Didn't matter if I was happy or sad, my emotions were a huge disruption to him. So I was fairly frozen, I think. And then I watched my mother begin to do her own personal work. That's really what changed everything. And she began to go to counseling and go to therapy, and began to tell people the truth about what was going on in our household. And as I watched her awaken and sort of come alive and become this completely different person, I also felt the pull of that as her daughter on me. And then, of course, she knew that there had been damage done, and so she put me in my first workshop when I was 17 years old, one of those spin-offs from Est called Actualizations. And I began this pathway of personal growth, awakening myself. And it took a long time. It took a lot of hard work, because I was the kind of person who, if emotions began to bubble up in me, I couldn't speak. I had literally a neurological, emotional belief system that said if I speak my emotions, I could die. I could literally die.
Right.
So to find my voice, I watched my mother find her voice, and that helped me find my voice. And that was really powerful, because I think we are way showers to each other. Like you're saying, my mother was to me, you have been to me, women are for each other. We are way showers. And it was a pretty powerful way she showed me.
Well, it's so wonderful that you're talking about this, because you are a dynamic speaker today. So I'm sure people listening to this, especially that know you, would think, well, how is that possible? You walk on the stage, you light up the stage, you bring wisdom, and so I guess the thing is like, I have two questions, like my mind is going like this. So the first one is, how did you, or what did you go through to be able to find healthy, sustainable relationships in your life, having come from where you came from?
Because I couldn't feel comfortable always speaking my truth or being my truth, what I went through was a lot of painful relationships where I hid myself from those relationships in every realm of my life, and then felt very unloved and unseen and unacknowledged. And so what I had to go through, I think, was really in the realm of not only reclaiming my voice, but the steps that almost every human has to go through, but they felt really profound for me, was the steps of becoming my authentic self, and putting myself out there and risking being hurt, being ridiculed, being made wrong, being unloved. And those years, I will say, for me in ministry, specifically at New Vision Center in Scottsdale, were some of the most healing years of my life, because that community, the whole philosophy of that community was the wonderful call to be authentic, even for me as the spiritual leader. And so what I began to learn and see is that as I risked being my authentic self, it didn't always work out perfectly, but more often than not, people at the very least loved and respected that I was willing to show up and be me and not hide or pretend to be something else. And so that began to become such a reward for my soul, that love, that there became this moment where it feels like something shifted, and not being authentic became a long ago thing from my past. And now it's very hard for me to even hide and, not be authentic and not speak my truth. And I'm not very good at lying, because it's just gone all the way to the other side now for me. And that feels very freeing at the same time. And it's a risk, as you know, because if you choose to stand up and shine, not everybody's going to like the light you shine. Not everybody's going to agree with you. Not everybody's going to appreciate you. But to
Yeah.
hide was going to kill me. I'm sure.
Right.
I'm sure it would have killed
Well,
me.
you and I have similar paths in that regard, and finding your voice is one of the most extraordinary and sometimes some of the most painful things that you can do. I also happen to know that you are married to your soulmate, and
Yes.
that is a reflection of the authentic Michelle coming forward
Mhm.
to invite that level of love in.
Absolutely. Yes. And that relationship is certainly one that I feel completely at free to be myself, free to be me. Absolutely. And it is
It's
a wonderful thing.
So I want to talk about your book, but just before we get to the book, I want to talk about, you are a leader in a very large New Thought community, a
Mhm.
very respected, world-renowned community. And so I'd like to know, first of all, about the calling that you got to be in ministry, but I'd really like to talk about, you know, what's it called up in you? Because when you step into that energetic field, it calls something else forward.
Mhm. Well, the calling for me was really, it felt like something out of the blue. I had a history of, in high school, loving musical theater and choir and singing. And so when I decided to go to college at the University of Colorado here in Denver, I declared my major communications and theater. And while I was in between high school and college, I decided, well, I'm going to take some of those classes they're always talking about at that church. And I was sitting in one of those classes one day, and it has happened a few times in my life where I felt like a voice outside of me said, "You should be a minister." And I laughed. I thought it was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard. I thought with this major I was pursuing that I could possibly be in network news or on the stage or in movies or something like that. I had an entertainment career completely mapped out for myself. And I had this perception that ministers were boring, and I'd been at the church and I loved our ministers, but I'd never once looked at any of them and thought, I want to be where they are. Never had occurred to me. So it seemed like a silly, stupid idea. And I really pushed it off and pushed it off. But this community and this spiritual teaching, if you go deep into it, it calls you to do your personal work. And so I continued to take classes, as you mentioned in my bio, and I decided I would pursue that practitioner license thing. And that was a lot of personal growth work, a lot of burning away of that which is no longer serving. And so as that fell away, I remember having this moment where I found myself, basically, it felt like on my knees, surrendered, saying, okay, ministry, I'll do ministry. And that day I gave up all those other dreams. They just kind of fell away, and my pursuit became ministry. And I remember coming to work the next day at Mile High and telling Roger Teal that I had this call and I had finally surrendered and I was going to go to ministry school, which would have been in LA. And he said, that's interesting. We're opening a school of ministry right here at Mile High. And so I was the first one to apply. So it really felt like a soul call, something that I had not ever thought of, that just rose up in me and propelled me forward. And so I think that also means that the work getting there and the work to be there continues to have its way with me all the time, which for me is always about that deep inner spiritual work, to continue to do the work to see where I have been hiding myself, see where I'm not letting my light shine, deal with the shadow aspect of us that still continues to believe it's not good enough or it can't. And all of that happens in community and with other people as you continue to work with people, I find, or as on teams or in groups or in partnership, as I work with my partner in lead ministry or with congregation. And it's a continual call to be doing what it is that I preach to people they should be doing. That's really very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and to do it on such a large stage,
Yes.
I mean, it's like there is no hiding. You are 100% visible no
Yes.
matter what. And
Mhm.
so you've also been nurturing this community through a pandemic.
Yes. Yes.
And so I want to know how in the world did you do that and write a book at the same time?
Well, the truth is that I had written this book, the big chunk of it, in 2019 before the pandemic. So
Okay.
what happened during the pandemic was I was able to finish off some of it, surrender it over to editors. And the part I did in 2020 was mostly cleaning up and readjusting. So I didn't actually sit and write, because you're right, I don't know how I could have written a book in 2020, because there were so many other things for us to be focused on in keeping people supported through this really challenging time.
Well,
And
yeah, they couldn't come in the room.
right, how do you provide pastoral care and prayer support and uplift people when they can't be there in person? And so it was an immense creative challenge, an immense spiritual challenge, an immense organizational challenge. And I think that I'm most proud that we all met the challenge. All our board, all of our staff, all of our ministers, all of us just really came together in a profound way. And we're always all about helping to keep our community supported and uplifted. And of course, there were members of our community for whom this pandemic really didn't affect them. Their health was fine, their finances were fine, their jobs were fine. But then there were also quite a few of them who lost jobs, who had health issues or lost loved ones, had financial issues. We had very generous donors, for example, a donor who donated a big chunk of money and said, if anyone in the church can't pay their rent or can't feed themselves or their family, please use this money to help out. And so we were able to help out a lot of people who got into that struggle space. So that's the classic way that a church or a spiritual community can support people really continued to show up, but we had to be creative about how we did it and what it looked like, for sure. And it was big.
Absolutely. And you did a beautiful job. It was
Thank you.
quite inspiring for me to witness. So I want to talk about your book, Resolve Your Fears, Activating Your Spiritual Immune System. Okay, where did this title come from? and what pulled you to write it?
So here's the truth. The original title that I had given it, the working title in 2019, was Fear, the Virus That Really Killed Us. I went to a writing workshop and I was asked to consider writing a book that I had passion about, a topic that if I could write about it and change it on the planet, that it could help people's lives be better. And for me, for a long time now, if asked, what do I think would most help people thrive? I've thought that it would be the eradication of fear. If we could stop being so afraid, afraid of the future, afraid of growing old, afraid of each other, afraid of the people in who are not like us in other countries and other religions and other political parties. If we could stop being afraid of our own bodies, if we could stop being afraid of God, whatever we believe God to be, if we could eradicate fear, I feel like, or be more courageous, if you want to put the spin on the opposite of it, that I feel like people would be happier, would live a better life. And so I knew the book wanted to be about fear, but then in 2020, when the pandemic hit and I started working with the editors, we started saying that title might be a little insensitive, given that we've all been doing this battle with this virus, right? So we worked and came up with a different title, but my theory in the book is that our physical immune system, when we do what's necessary in our physical world to keep our body strong and help our immune system meet the needs that allow it to thrive, we could go to a room where someone has the flu and that virus could get into our system, but our immune system would fight it off. And immunologists tell us all the time that we all have cancer cells that pour into our body, but our immune system fights them off. And what's the difference between when the immune system does fight them off and when the immune system doesn't fight them off, where suddenly those cancers do take, or those cells do take over, and someone suddenly has the flu or has cancer, has some illness. And it's all about keeping that baseline of your immune system strong. Now, there are a lot of other factors, of course, that have to be in consideration, but that theory became the theory that I began to ponder around fear, that I believe there's a spiritual immune system too, that our consciousness, the seed of our consciousness is like our immune system. And that if we constantly feed it fear and resentment and anger and constantly are focused on negativity, then as the world, the media, your mother, your partner, other things feed fear to us, that we are prone to what I call getting the fear flu, where we just have this underlying illness of fear and we look at everything through the eyes of fear. So I wrote this little fairly basic book just to say, do what you can do to help your spiritual immune system stay strong, so that fear that is being fed to us on a constant basis can't take us down so easily.
Yeah, because fear is a virus for the human design. Okay, hold up your book. This is your first book. We need to celebrate it. Yes, awesome, awesome, beautiful. So I want you to tell people how to find you, how to find your book. I mean, I know they can find you at Mile High Church, but where else can they connect with you?
Thank you. I have a new website that is www.resolveyourfears.com. And if you go to resolveyourfears.com, you can see the book, purchase the book there. You can also purchase the book on Amazon if you choose to. And on my resolveyourfears.com, I have a fear meditation that people can listen to help eradicate fear. I'm posting some blogs to continue to talk about different things we can do to stay courageous and different experiences that I'm having. I have a place that you can sign on to be on a list, so that as things are happening with the book or things are happening with the blogs, I can reach out to people. So it's a fun experience to have, to head in this direction and to have this little book that I'm proud of, and I really hope helps people learn to be more courageous.
That is so wonderful. So ladies, I hope you will run out and get this book. I have witnessed this woman over the years, move beyond fears to step into power. And so I'm sure that when you read this, it will be insightful. So I asked the same last question of every guest.
Okay.
And the question is, this show is called Women Awakening. What is the one thing you think women need to know about the importance of their awakening?
I just got the chills. I think women need to know this is our time. This is our time. And I don't say that in it's time for women to take over the world. I think it's our time to step up into equality like never before in so many realms of our lives. And we're seeing it all over the planet that things, we are in an amazing evolutionary time, that we stand on the shoulders of women from our past who stood up and said, we want to vote and we want equal rights and we want, all women to be treated equally. And we now are beginning, I think, to see the wave of that awakening. And so we each have our part to play, and that we each have to step up. We have to be our authentic selves. We have to awaken to the light within us, and we have to shine it and give it and step up into the world like never before.
Oh, Michelle, that's beautiful. And how wonderful for me to witness your time and you stepping into that awakening. Thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's been wonderful to be with you.
So, ladies, we do this once a week. I'm going to invite you to come back to subscribe and really dive deep into what these women have to offer, because each one of them is showing us that there is a field of infinite possibilities and potentiality that we can step into. I want to remind you that you're powerful, that you're dynamic, that you're magnificent, that there's no one like you. You are unrepeatable. And so you can step into the fullness of who you are and accelerate your awakening, because the world is waiting for you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be with you, and I'll see you next week.